Before we start, so firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet and the lands about which we're going to speak about, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Now, I've kind of probably misnamed this session today environmental accounting. Effectively, the whole exercise of economics is about environmental accounting. It's really about investor perspectives is what I wanted to talk about today. So really do a stock take to make sure that all the technical stuff we've been talking about, how we're accounting for environmental benefit, whether that's going to tick the boxes of investors in natural resource management, or just to make sure it's not an academic modelling exercise that isn't fit for purpose. So a quick recap on the economics platform. There's 4 key components to it. So economics plan, so catchment and sub-catchment level planning for coming up with investment portfolios. Economics project, so farm scale modelling of individual projects. Economics report, so being able to do impact reporting of those planned works and applied works. And economics market, so to be able to facilitate getting these planned projects or investment programs into environmental marketplaces. And the example is the Reef Credits marketplace. And each of these images here are representations of where we've had a crack at these things in the Reef region. So this first round of activity is all around the economics plan, but it's done within the perspective of the broader platform, if that makes sense. So economics plan, so sub-catchment level, it means we're lumping things up, and the purpose here is about rapid investment portfolio generation. And our target audience are investors in NRM, and the users of the tool are those same investors, but also the high-level bodies that support them. So natural resource management bodies, local government authorities. It's relatively high-level and generalised modelling approach, and we're intending to base it on largely the approach that we've used in the Reefonomics platform. And we've got both quantitative and qualitative measures within here, but we've covered those in earlier sessions. So with economics plan, principally what it does is it generates a portfolio of the most cost-effective set of 150 different things, different actions. And an action could represent an agricultural practice improvement or an intervention, and the associated support mechanisms that go along with that action, like extension work, the like. There's a list there of all the different kind of lumped up action areas. So we'll split those out and we get about 150 different things. And this image on the side is kind of to represent the basis of coming up with those portfolios is to be able to identify for the intended investment what the priorities are. So whether the priorities are on water quality elements or what we've got represented in a reef world, call them co-benefits, but what the relative importance of different values are in coming up with that portfolio. So what's novel about it is that it's not just a water quality game or a biodiversity game, but it's water quality, biodiversity, First Nations, social, economic, and climate change, trying to consider all those things simultaneously and weight them up to come up with a portfolio that ticks multiple boxes, and then to be able to explore those results by spatial unit or by the value that you care about. We want to be able to represent confidence in the underlying predicted outcomes, also confidence in the costs associated with predicting those things, be able to represent the temporal response, so to be able to consider in a portfolio some actions that work very rapidly, like piling, using rock work or pouring concrete compared to revegetation work, and to be able to consider the likely adoption potential of these things, because all of these actions by and large occur on privately held lands or privately managed lands anyway. So we've got to be able to convince the landholder to come on board. So having said that, and that's kind of a bit of a recap of stuff that's gone before. So what we think matters to investors and where the value in this platform is about, because they want to invest in real change, the methods and the governance and management around those methods, it's got to be robust, defendable, repeatable, scalable, and if not simple, at least easily communicated. And I've got a few boxes over there on the right that I want to talk about that generally encompass those things. So let's talk about governance. So I'm proposing something similar to what we do in the Reef Tools area, where effectively we have a steering committee around this. And what we're intending to do with Reefonomics is to be able to have curators of the different data and modeling components that go into the application effectively. So we've got an ongoing point of control, if you like, and point of truth about being able to ensure that the things are live and managed and updated, and there's a point of interaction with someone who's got discipline level expertise. And so each of those curators, I've called them here, effectively sort of represented in this bottom figure, where the curator interacts with what we have in Reefonomics is a master library of actions. So they're able to populate all the content around each of those actions. That master library of actions, or this point of truth of actions, is used within the application by our different investors, so the users. They also have the ability to create their own personal versions of those actions as well. Typically, they'll inherit or copy something from the master library, and they might modify it to consider, what if we can get this for a cheaper price, for example, in a different region. So that's our governance and curation story that we're pitching here. It's essentially what we've got going on in Reefonomics, and that doesn't feel broken yet. So we're keen to continue with that approach. Now I want to talk about confidence, and to do that, we're just going to talk a bit about the basic principles of how the modelling works. So in economics plan, we have an available area that we can do work on. We've got all the measures that we care about represented here as load or condition. So it might be a water quality parameter or a social parameter. We've got an action, and that action can be applied over this area. So this area, we know at the upper limit of possible area to do work on. And then we've got represented impact of that action on the measure that we care about. We apply the action, and then we do some accounting. Basically, we remanage the area. We look at the load or condition after we've applied it. So each of these elements has a confidence associated with it. So our base data that we're using to drive that, there's a level of confidence associated with how good that data is. There's a level of confidence around how well we can predict the impact of the action on that measure. So we combine those things through to give us an overall running confidence in the collective portfolio. And then after Friday's discussions, we want to be able to do the same thing from an economic perspective. So we've come up with cost estimates around those actions, but we've got a level of confidence around how good those predictions are. And then ultimately, we've got a portfolio cost and a confidence associated with those components. So we talked about confidence in some detail in an earlier session, and I'll just repeat this slide from that session. It's a very big topic to unpack: confidence, error, uncertainty. But fundamentally, there are two basic ways that we can be wrong. So epistemic, which means our conceptual model uncertainty. So the system just doesn't work the way that we think it does. And then there's data related uncertainty. So data collection error, data insufficiency error, modeling error. This second part, we can typically quantify that numerically and come up with an error estimate, but epistemic, we just don't know what we don't know. So it's not possible to put a firm number on that, but we get indication of epistemic error based on the maturity of the science. So the approach that we have applied in Reefonomics, and we think is appropriate to apply here, is effectively this 5-point sort of heuristic method to represent confidence in the underlying data, the base data, the predicted method, and also in the the estimation of the cost of implementing these actions. So this is a screenshot out of Reefonomics where we do the little survey, come up with a confidence score, and these are the underlying texts that describe each of those different sort of sub questions ultimately that we get out of this. And I like it. It's a robust method. It's got a currency. It's been around for a while. So like anything we're doing here, let's not invent anything if we can avoid it. So that's where what we're proposing to do around the confidence side of things. And then I've got one more point to discuss, and this came out of Friday's meeting about economics. What we don't have in Reefonomics is any indexing or discounting, but we propose to include the option for indexing, so to account for future increases in the cost of implementing actions. And this matters if you're considering an investment program over a longer term, so a multi-year program of works. So let's say a 5 or 10-year investment program, indexing matters as things get more expensive. A short term, 1 or 2 years, typically doesn't really matter. So we propose to include that. So, and we'll just give a little bit of context now about the at the individual project level. So this is coming later. We'll start on this early in the new year. But essentially, it's a farm scale or project scale data capture and modeling exercise. It can be very locally specific. And so it doesn't have to fly over broad areas. We can use the best available data. And our focus here is on using existing methods where they exist, not trying to reinvent new ones. So that's coming up, and we'll want to re-engage again at that level with NRM investors to make sure that we capture things appropriately at that project level. Okay, so this is 10 of 12 in this session, so there's another couple to come, but each of these are being posted on the economics.net.au videos, so there's kind of a back history there, or if you know of people who couldn't attend these, who want to, there's a place to send them. Thank you very much.